we think of the Western classical music tradition, all too often the conversation is dominated by examples of famous and familiar white male composers. But over the course of history, there have been many composers whose work has been sidelined or even forgotten simply because they're not white or male. Today, I'd like to talk to you about Florence Price, a pioneering 20th century composer who is the first Black female to have a symphony performed by a major American orchestra and therefore to be considered a symphonic composer. Florence died in 1953, and between that time and 2009, much of her work was thought to be lost until it was rediscovered in a house in Chicago, and a group of dedicated Black musicians and musicologists have been working hard to keep her legacy alive and to reconstruct a lot of her lost work. Florence was born in 1887 in Little Rock in Arkansas and went on to study at the New England Conservatory of Music, which at the time was one of the few colleges that accepted African-American students. She moved back to Little Rock, which was by that point a racially segregated town where racial tensions continued to drastically escalate. And after the horrific lynching of a Black man, Florence and her family moved from Little Rock, from the Deep South, up to Chicago, where the majority of Florence's career as a composer really began. In 1932, Florence won a major prize for her symphony in E minor, and in the same competition also won third prize at the same time for a separate piano concerto. A couple of years later, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra performed her symphony, and as Classic FM notes, this catapulted her into life as a composer. She went on to compose 300 works, and this included songs as well. Notably, her friend Marian Anderson, a contralto, performed one of her songs on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington on Easter Sunday 1939, which was broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of Americans across the country. Florence died in 1953, and a lot of her work was thought to be lost. Florence's story inspires me in lots of ways. It's a story of great resilience. She faced numerous hurdles, the terrible, horrendous racial prejudice and violence of the time, misogyny. She faced domestic abuse, financial struggles, fought to provide for her children as a single mother. She also faced health difficulties, but she was tremendously driven by her passion for music and her passion for composing. She was very aware and acknowledged the barriers that her race and gender presented, and wrote to many conductors of the time, musical directors of the time, to fight for opportunities to be heard and for her work to be shared. Her faith played a key role in her life and in her music. Musically, she drew a lot of influence from African-American church music, from spirituals, and combined this and fused this musically with her inspiration from European composers of the time, particularly also from the Romantic era, people like Tchaikovsky. And she also used what she could, or other things she could draw on from her musical heritage, such as West African rhythms that she would incorporate into her work. As a music lover, a musician, a student, I was ashamed that it was only relatively recently that I heard about Florence and her work and her story. And I would really encourage you, as we continue to commemorate Black History Month, to take some time to listen to some of her work. Unfortunately, many of it is still waiting for a major kind of professional publication and recordings, but there is stuff available online. And I hope you are as inspired as I have been by how creative and dynamic and moving her compositions are, and how inspiring her life and her story have been too.